It came off the other side of the wheels because it's a package from China with infinite power. Yeah. I was really excited seeing that the XU Retro is back with the XU20 version 32, or at least V32. No idea why actually they're calling it that. But this particular model, is this going to be just as exciting as the previous one? That's something we're going to be chit-chatting about today. So the XU20, or at least the previous model, the XU10, was interesting because it was an affordable way to play retro emulation, but also on a nice quality way. But with this particular model, they change out a lot of things, and some things that makes no sense to me. Let me explain. So when it comes to this particular model, it comes with, of course, the toilet paper manual like always, so and a very nice cable. So the overall form factor, they changed it out this time, and I think this is one of the approaches they wanted to do. They wanted to maybe do something different. But now we're going to be having a 2.8-inch display with a touchscreen. And I was more like, a touchscreen on such a tiny device, why did they actually do that? However, do a little bit of a chit chat about the specification. Let's go full nerdy mode. We're going to be using the box today because I'm just lazy when it comes to editing. So this thing is the XU20 V32. Still no idea why it's called V32. 60-bit Android system, yep, with a special overall, let's say, interface that is made for this device. So it comes with the all-winner Cortex A53. And you know, when it comes to the CPU-GPU combination, it's okay. It's not like the most powerful, but it does have a lot of potential. RAM, we're going to be having 2 GB DDR4. And we do have Wi-Fi capability. Vibrating motor is actually supported, and it's quite aggressive and fingerprint-free multi-touch. So let's do a quick overview. So the first thing they actually changed out is the D-pad. Because the previous one had like more the PlayStation 4, let's say similar 4 separate buttons that had a very nice touch. Now they went for, let's say, a curved D-pad, and the overall travel is quite long. So we're having select to start over here and the ABXY buttons. This is like the wicked test. You can make an ASMR out of this, but this feels really nice. And they're like these tiny buttons like with the Nintendo Switch itself. So we have the G button, that's actually for the menu. We have the 2 memory card or SD card option. So when it comes to this, when it comes to this freaking micro SD card, there is one problem. They're still using these non-generic brands. And these things get corrupted fairly easy. I should make a video about it, how you need to backup and how you can fix that issue with a better overall solution. Physical volume control, very glad with that. On top we're finding the USB for charging, having a headphone jack out, and the back we're finding the on-off switch. So let's hold it for a couple of seconds and let's turn on the device. So when it comes to the speaker, they went for a mono configuration. That doesn't really sound that bad, but I wish they went for something else. So over here having the back buttons micro switched, and I must say the micro switch, not like a very nice thing to do it. Also the configuration is very comfortable for your hands. Okay, there's one thing is that there is a little bit of a problem with the device, but they are going to be fixing that. Is that we're going to be pressing it like here. You're actually using the micro switch on the back. So it's kind of weird, but you know, when it comes to that, I would not know why I should grab this device and press it like that, because it's quite, you need to put a lot of force in it to actually do that. However, they're going to be having a fix for it. They made a separate video about it and you need to open it up. It's fairly easy to do. However, so you can actually see that this is using the Aurora launcher. That is their, I think there was like the personal overall software they're using. They created for this device. So yeah, so this is actually what you're getting. Let's get into an overall, let's say, overview of the software. Because there are some interesting things to it. Let's see, let's lower the, yeah, that's much better. Let's lower the freaking lighting over here. So navigation can be done by touch. Yeah, so okay, that's cool. Library. So in here we're finding all of the different emulators. And we're going to be having the similar stuff that we've seen before, like with the previous, let's say, handheld. Only this thing can maybe do a little bit better N64 emulation. They made a separate PSP Minis, very glad with that, because PSP Minis are freaking awesome. Most of the time they run quite well on this. Place portable. So when it comes to this, I just wanted to do a quick overview also of, like I say, some more demanding emulators. So when it comes to the layout, it's basic. In here we're going to be having, you can see the apps. So with the apps, they're having the separate emulators. So let's touch the games. You can implement new games there. Having the tools, but I can also use the outside back buttons to use that. So we have in the launcher Aurora, calendar, some apps implemented, we even have Firefox. But the weird thing is that we don't have anything that's coming. I think there's nothing going on when it comes to the Android part. Like we cannot add the Play Store. So that is absolutely a missed opportunity. It would be cool to implement my own games I purchased through the store and actually do it like that. But in here we're going to mess around with some settings. Battery life can be checked out here. So you can see that this thing still has 62% of the battery life. Display can be adjusted if you want to, but let's go back. So that's it. Like there was nothing actually much going on. We do have separate settings. So we have settings in the Android, but you can have the settings over here. System settings, we can update the game list and configuration. We can even have the game switcher. See, turning on the game switcher will allow you to quickly select recent played games. And this is the device input. It also automatically just starts the rumble motor. And here we can check everything. Let's lower that freaking volume, and this thing is really loud when it comes to that. And I just wanted to showcase that problem like with the micro switches over here, but again, this is going to be like a super easy fix for opening it up. And we're going to be doing that later on. Next up, I wanted to just show the theme color settings. We can change that out too. CPU performance settings. You can see that having set to balance. I'm just going to be keeping it there. And this is to do of the heat and everything. There's no active cooling whatsoever. So there's a lot of stuff we can actually change out if you have any problems. FTP server has been implemented over there. We can backup, restore emulator storage settings, and about Aurora. And as you can see, that is made for the XU Retro overall gaming experience. But you know, let's do also a chit chat about the previous one, like the previous XU. Because this is actually one of the things I wanted to talk about today too. So the reason I was so excited is because I just love this old one. I like after all of the devices, the R35, 6, whatever they're like released, the XU10 is still one of those that has a little bit like say touched my wicked heart. Because this thing was so cool. So you can actually see that when it comes to the form factor, they slimmed it down, but also removed both of the joysticks. And then is the question, is this actually a smart choice? So one of the things I really loved about it is just the feel, the way how the travel was, but also when it comes to the comfortability of the D-pad. So that's kind of interesting that they changed it out. And this is not like a super bad thing. I would say that the resistance is slightly different, and of course the overall configuration. But how about the software itself? Also here they went a completely different approach. So when it comes to the older model, I really love this theme. This looks really nice. Oh, I'm just actually touching the back buttons over here, but in a different way. But you know, we're going to be looking at both of the software. Let me know in the comments what you think, because I think this older layout is so much cooler. They also did an upgrade. I think there were a couple of different versions of this particular handheld. If you're going to be opening up, let's say the list, you're getting this particular list over here. But if you're going to be looking into, let's say you're going to be having something else, we're going to be having a similar, let's say, kind of experience. So personally still I prefer to actually use the older version when it comes for the simple games. So yeah, when it comes to this all, you can switch fairly easy to different, like say, apps. And of course, thanks to the Android part, we have the option to actually play more. But they should implement the Play Store so we can download games. But I don't see myself playing Plants vs. Zombies with this tiny, tiny screen. Where it's quite accurate, I must say that part I really like. I don't know, is this going to be an extra value to the situation? But if you're going to be booting up a game, you sometimes do see actually the touch controls not going to be a big issue at all. But how about the emulation part? So when it comes to playing some N64, I did see that it struggles. It struggles sometimes. So the overall emulation performance is not going to be perfect. Another problem we're going to be facing is that we don't have a freaking analog stick. So some games, I want to say they're unplayable. But you can see that out of the box, this is going to be an issue. And that is quite unfortunate. The overall emulation performance, I did notice it still stutters here and there. So it's going to be a hit or miss situation. So no perfect N64 emulation with a price point like this. So it's kind of annoying that they actually like implemented this, because this is just freaking unplayable with a lot of slowdowns. And here we go. But of course, if you're going to be checking out maybe some less demanding games, we do have the option to actually play those. But yeah, is this the way how you want to go to? So this is running the Mupen 64 Plus, and if you're going to be pressing the G button, we're going to be having just a menu that is going to be popping up, and every emulator it's going to be different. But some of them will just run through RetroArch, and in this way we can just fairly easy play. However, we do have select, or actually, sorry, I mean start, and in here we can just use CPU mode, emulator core selection, and everything. So I must say you can even delete a ROM if you don't want to have that game anymore. So you can just switch fairly easy with the back buttons over there. And this way we can just fairly easy search their games. Let's see, Devil Crash. Yeah, that's the one I was actually searching for. So let's boot it up and I will show you how this is actually going to be working out. You can see it runs through RetroArch, boot out immediately everything. So the overall configuration, how this works, is quite nice. I must say that I am quite surprised with the overall quality of the speaker. I've been putting it to maximum. Okay, we need to use these buttons, the left on the D-pad and the B button. And of course with some basic 16-bit, we're not going to be having any issues whatsoever. So when it comes to, let's say, the overall display, man, this thing looks really nice. That's one thing to be sure. But let's do a side-by-side comparison. At the right over here, we're going to be having the XU10. And the XU10, I can tell you that this one does look quite nice. I must love that. I just like this display, but the brown kind of color that's actually on here that you don't see on the left of the XU20. This one is super bright, really colorful, and I must say in certain ways it looks really nice. But I think this is more like a personal thing. Same when buying a new television. What kind of colors do you personally prefer? Let me know in the comments. So when it comes to everything, like the way how this works and what you can do with it, select start or the G button will actually give you the menu that we've seen before. You can make a quick load, quick save with some of the RetroArch emulators, but that's it. So let's close the content. We can just actually do that and it goes back to the main menu. So where we're going to be actually having the option to play Mega Drive and everything else, that works just fine, But we can actually do a lot of cool things when it comes to playing some DS games, because in this kind of a game we can actually mess around with the touchscreen if you want to. We can switch over here. So let's mess around with it. Let's figure out how I can actually switch to one single screen and then switch there. So new user, I think that would be very cool to actually mess around with it and to see how I can freaking change out the bloody screen, because normally having the joysticks and we can just press them and switch between modes, and we don't have that option now. That's a little bit annoying, because trying to type is almost freaking impossible. Because let's be honest, this is quite difficult to play like that. Yep, I accept. This is not the way I want to play. So what I actually did is you can switch by using the button over here. You can switch between modes. Okay, that's nice. Let's see if we can switch now. Okay, cancel. This is much better. I will not say this is going to be the ultimate way to play, but it's better than nothing. Can I touch it like that? Yep, I can actually touch it like that. So this is a fun way to play where I have no idea where are the freaking gems I needed to swap. But this part seems to be working fine. But I think this is going to be one of those cool things you can actually do when it comes to the touchscreen. I think this is going to be the, let's say, the extra that we can do with the previous model. Yeah, found one. Woohoo! But still using the main menu like this. I need an amplifying glass. Like from, okay, which what? Is this? Exit? Exit? Oh, wait, I can change. Quit. Yeah, there we go. So moving on to some Sega Dreamcast emulation, and I noticed there we do have some overall nice performance. So the frame counter is on left bottom corner, giving you an idea how it's actually going to be working out. And yeah, you can see that it dips to 90 frames per second. I think it's still an overall playable configuration. So D-pad wise, I must say that this is not the most comfortable D-pad for playing shmups or bullet hell shmups. And the reason why is quite simple actually, is that the resistance, but also if you're going to be moving around, you can feel that the D-pad, you know, it needs to be really smooth. I do have this clicky feeling, so when it comes to that, no, it's not going to be my favorite D-pad at all. So where the previous one was absolutely great. Okay, so this actually happens when you're pressing the G button or the menu button. Let's go settings, let's see how we can freaking shut this thing off. And you know, we can mess around with the settings if you want to. You can tweak it if it's going to be needed. Let's see, it's running on Vulkan. And here we can change out all kinds of things that they may be implemented that we're not going to be needing at all. However, if you want to be shutting this down, I think the overall, let's say, seamless experience that we had, like having this menu, click a button and go back instantly, is not over here. And that's one of the things that kind of annoys me at this point. Moving on to a fighting game. I did read in the comments some people really don't like it. I'm going playing fighting games, but yeah, for me this is going to be the ultimate test for playing and testing out the D-pad beside for shmups or beat 'em ups. So when it comes for playing fighting games, I did notice something. So this is not like a bad D-pad at all. However, so the overall travel resistance and the clicky feel makes it quite sometimes difficult, especially in the beginning, to actually get some moves out. Now I can just do them easily, but I can tell you that I was not a big fan of it in the beginning. But if you're going to be playing some, let's say, Breakers or Street Fighter, for example, it's going to be an option to actually do easily super moves. But again, you need to get used to it. However, the D-pad itself, it's a playable situation, but absolutely not the best one out there. So for example, having the older version, the configuration is completely different. Where this was such an overall smooth, let's say, experience. So it still had like a lot of resistance, but the way how this actually looks, but also how it actually played, I must say that it's not also the best D-pad out there, but this was an overall better configuration. Make it a little bit more loose, to make it easy to fight for fighting games, but also when it comes for playing shmups and beat 'em ups. Well, let's see, how did they actually configure the PPBS emulator? Let's see, we're going over here, render resolution one time, frame skipping is set to off, and let's see what's going on with the frames. So let's check that box over there. See, this is one of the things I just love, the touchscreen. It's going to be so convenient, like messing around with emulators. Oh crap! No! Oh! Having a brain fart here over here. Let's try that again. Exit to menu. I want to play Ridge Racer. Yeah. So overall, we're going to be having two black bars over here. I do see some weird things in the display when actually having this white overall screen. But beside that, let's do a little bit of a gaming racing, and let's see how the overall display and will play. And I have no idea what I'm saying. So let's move into some Ridge Racing gaming, because I'm really curious. So it also depends what kind of game. If you're going to be having a Tekken 5 or Tekken 6, I noticed a lot of noticeable differences in performance. But let's see, without frame skipping, that we're having an overall fun experience. So the D-pad, man, it's okay. We don't have an analog stick, so if you love to play with that, it's going to be absolutely another fun experience. You can see stutters. But let's move into some drifting. Let's see, you can do anything here. But so far, I do hear some hiccups, but we do have an overall playable situation. I would not try to play some God of War in that case, because that is not going to be an overall fun experience. But beside that, playing some PlayStation Portable is actually fun. Drifting with stutters, oh yeah. But what you can do is also make a quick save over there, if you want to. Let's see how that works. Not the best game to actually test it out. But let's move to something else like the PSP Minis, because that is so freaking awesome. Jetpack Joyride, yes! Love that game. So, well, actually, I think we can't not use the touchscreen, of course, because originally it was a touchscreen game. And if you had the option to join the, let's say, Play Store, well, it would be cool. We can actually play this game on here like the original one. But let's see what's going on. So let's see which is the X. So there we go. That has been configured correctly. Oh, square 2. So the overall configuration of the buttons is great. It's correct like the original controller. Sometimes they try to mess that part up too. But you know, if you're going to be playing games like this, the minis are running just great. So playing PlayStation 1 games, you don't really need a device like the XU20. We have so many freaking devices now that can actually play PlayStation 1. It's like ridiculous. If you want to have like an R35, R36 or the previous model, that you can actually play just fine on there. And we don't have enough power to actually do an upscaling, because if you're going to be looking PlayStation with some upscaling, that looks absolutely amazing. But we cannot really do that with this particular chipset. So out of the box, native resolution, it works just fine. Man, Handheld is such a fun game. I've played it a lot on the Xbox Live, or the Xbox Arcade, I think it was called. There we go. Woo! Guardian Heroes on the Sega Saturn. So Sega Saturn has some really nice classic games, and this is one of them. I think it's exclusive for the Sega Saturn, and you know, where I actually always played PlayStation 1, I did miss out a lot of cool games. And of course with emulation we can actually experience these games after many years. So when it comes to emulation performance, Sega Saturn is a very difficult overall emulator to just run on these devices. However, with the right setup, maybe we can tweak and do some cool things. And they were running on the Yabash 2. So far, I don't see any weird thing going on. Let's see if we can go to settings, and yeah, it shows the frames. And let's see if I can just go back to the original game. But let's skip all of the craziness. So far, you can see that it's running on 50 frames. Let's crank up the volume. I think this is one of those weird things I always have in the Sega Saturn, that the audio is quite low compared with the other emulators. But let's move into the gameplay, man. Let's skip this. So I did notice in the intro we had like 55 frames. You can see it is not running on full 60 frames. It's even dipping now. So that is one thing you need to take consideration with these devices. It's just pushing it to the limit. In my opinion, they just should add a couple of games that are playable, but is this playable under 50 frames? Nah. And these are like two-dimensional games. Don't even mention if you're going to be trying the three-dimensional stuff. So it's kind of cool to see this running, but this is not going to be the fun way to actually experience Sega Saturn. So let's move on to something else. Let's see what we're having. So the old scarf that runs just fine. We tested out some Naomi. And you know, there's all kinds of cool stuff we can play on this, but you know, I just wanted to push to it, let's say, the maximum. And for example, having some Sega Dreamcast, that would be interesting too. We can play the Sega Dreamcast, but of course don't forget, some games so far I know we're going to be needing an analog stick, or it's going to be so much more convenient to actually play. So when it comes to emulation performance, it's kind of, I want to say, disappointing, but you know, this is a great example of that. We're going to be needing a freaking analog stick, or we're going to be needing to configure the emulator to the D-pad itself. That's of course another way to go to. Mess around with the settings again and go away. But the most dangerous part is, of course, if you're going to be doing this, yeah, it's highly possible that we're going to be messing up the other stuff like the D-pad. Or so this is a little bit of one of those things I just wanted to showcase, that emulation performance is not running like full speed at least, and you know, it's going to be in shenanigans when setting stuff up. We're going to be needing a freaking analog stick. That's one thing. But if you just want to play some simple games, I think this is going to be an overall fun experience. Of course, we're going to be having a problem with some of the emulators because they are like way too, let's say, demanding. And we're not there yet, you know, we need more power for actually having full speed when it comes to, say, Sega Dreamcast, Naomi, or like Sega and Sega Saturn. So one of the things I did like about it is that we're having some overall nice, let's say, display configuration. Even touching it, you can see that it activates the freaking Android. Let's see, it can even freaking start the game. The audio itself, I'm quite surprised how well it sounds for this tiny speaker. Normally I'm just a big fan of, like, say, having two of them. They should like maybe add two speakers over here to have like the maximum overall, let's say, performance when it comes to that. It is actually kind of cool to see the Sega 32X on here, but why does it sound completely effed up? Holy crap! I have no idea why this is going on, but let's get into the game. But that's the reason I love to test these things. Because you will be surprised sometimes how messed up some of the things are. It still stutters. But it can have a couple of reasons, because this thing is getting really hot at the moment. So that is one thing. So when it comes to playing old school games, you know, this is just fine. You know, we don't have any weird things going on. And I already mentioned at the beginning of the video, I just wanted to check it out, like, hey, what's going on when it comes to, let's say, the overall configuration and everything else. So you can even add it to favorites if you want to, make a favorite list if you find that something you're going to be using. But the overall configuration, you can see that you even implement all kinds of different bezels to get the right resolution. But I think when it comes to playing these games, you know, particularly old school stuff are just the most fun on these devices. But how many handhelds do you need in your life? If this is going to be the first one that maybe you want to buy ever, maybe it can be interesting. But we have so many options now. It's like really ridiculous to this point. And makes it really difficult also to choose which one is the best one. We do have an OTG port on top. So I wanted to give the device a reboot to see what's actually going on. But after connecting it, we're giving it a reboot. You can see the device turns on. But so far, I don't think the TV out function seems to be working. So the OTG port is kind of cool. But you know, some of the devices nowadays with the same price class maybe have even an HDMI out. But of course it depends on what kind of actually system you're going to be using and buying. Because all of them will have the positive and the negative. Also, the loading times of the XU Retro XU20 are quite long. I must say it boots up into, let's say, Android first and then utilizes the front end. But here you can see it loading out the front end. But so far there was nothing going on with the OTG port and HDMI out. So I'm guessing this doesn't work. The search, that's absolutely cool. So we have recent, so we can just look into the games that we played, but also search. So in here we're going to be having the option to actually search in all arcade, but that's kind of interesting. You need to mess around with it. And let's see, let's say we're going to be choosing Sonic. Sonic! Not going to be filling in it completely. Let's confirm. No match found. And the reason why I did this is because I wanted to see what happened. So, no match. Why is there no match found with Sonic? What the heck is going on? That is weird. Why is there no Sonic? And I know there was Sonic on here. Let's go to SO. No idea why this doesn't work, but it's really, really weird. Let's go with Desert. Do I spell it correctly? Yeah, I think it is. Let's go with all again. No! No, I don't need that. Oh, see, that seems to be working. I was looking into Desert Strike. Yeah, that's the one. So, that seems to be working fine, but somehow there is no Sonic. That is weird. Really weird. I thought it was on there, but whatever. The XU20 has a lot of potential, and the overall quality is not wrong. So there are a lot of things that can be improved, like the D-pad. It's not going to be my favorite one, so I think I'm not going to be using this device a lot. However, the multi-touch, let's say, is absolutely easy if we're going to be just messing around with the overall, let's say, emulators. The back part over here, that they implement a cooling method. I think this thing maybe even needs some active cooling, because this is getting really, really hot to the point. In the future we're going to be fixing the back button situation, but so far this is what you're getting. This is going to be the improvement of the XU10. So if I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm going to be just using this old school bad boy because I love it. Yeah, let me know in the comments what do you think. Thank you all for watching, and it will be great to see you in the next video.